You're good.
Good, thank you. Okay, so we'll call this Committee of the Whole January 27th to order. I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the unceded lands of the Mi'kmaq. The record of attendance, Lindsay, you have that, and I do have Councillor Lesser absent. So if we could make a motion to excuse Councillor Lesser. Councillor Hatfield, second by Councillor Cleveland. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. And the Deputy Mayor will be joining us probably in a few minutes. Do I need anything there, Jeff, for him coming in late? I don't think so.
Not necessary, no.
Okay. All right. Good. Declarations of conflict of interest, anyone? You can declare at the time of the agenda item. Good so far? Okay, and approval of agenda. Do we have any additions? I think we have one. Okay, so Councillor Cleveland and then Councillor Hatfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have an addition, National Curling Event.
National Curling, so I'm going to put that under, hang on one second, 11A. Go ahead, Councillor Hatfield.
And I'd like to add, and Councillor Cleveland will love this one, Deer Management Hunt.
Awesome. I think we all like that one.
Yeah.
And that will be 11B. Is there anything else? Go ahead, CAO.
Yeah, I'd like to have a discussion about the Police Advisory Board provincial appointee.
Okay. That's 11C.
And there was also the Accessibility Action Plan presentation added.
So 11D, accessible, so that's not on there.
No, you need a
No,
request.
the
from
facade
Supervisor.
is, that's right, yeah. Accessibility plan, we'll put that under D. Anything else, anyone? Okay, a motion to approve the agenda with the additions, please. Councillor Dare, second by Councillor Cleveland. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, so we have, okay, now we have a presentation. So Fishing Gear Coalition Project, and Sonia Smith is with us. Welcome, Sonia.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone.
We're going to turn this. I'm just going to find my mute button here. Doesn't
And
usually
am
work
I okay
there.
to share my screen now?
You sure are. Go ahead. Thank you.
Make sure we get everyone on here visible. Let's move my window. There. I think we've got it good now. Yes, good to go. So thank you, everyone. I really, really, truly appreciate this opportunity to join this meeting today and provide you with some information about the Fishing Gear Coalition of Atlantic Canada. So the coalition history is we were founded in November of 2018. We were comprised, and I say were because we currently have just a little over 50 members currently, and we incorporated as a nonprofit organization back in 2020. And the reason we did that is we were looking to apply to funding to help support the work that we wanted to do to support the commercial fishing industry. And right around that time, Department of Fisheries and Oceans announced a Ghost Gear Fund amount of $8.5 million. So we incorporated and then we wrote proposals to apply to that funding. So we currently have a board of directors, and our mission is working together to develop sustainable solutions for end of life and abandoned, lost and discarded fishing and aquaculture gear. So our goal is to design either a regulated or voluntary management program for end-of-life fishing gear across Eastern Canada. Our objectives with this project were to do research on our current waste streams and recycling practices that were already in place and design the program options. We engaged with stakeholders and rights holders, and we created a designed plan that we are hoping to implement and do a model pilot of in multiple municipalities, including yours. So moving on, throughout our project, under the funding, we were able to set aside some budget to try to do some education and engagement with our fish harvesters throughout Nova Scotia and offer to remove stockpiles of lobster traps from personal properties, from some of the Harbor Authority properties, and anywhere that, people were identifying that there were large stockpiles and that it could be an issue. So throughout that project, we were able to remove 5,300 traps, and you'll see on our map that that was done throughout the eastern shore, Digby Neck down as far as Briar Island, and we've removed traps from lower East Pubnico, as well as Valentine's Cove in the Antigonish County area. Now, the picture that you see on the screen is actually the picture of the current stockpile of traps that are sitting at the Yarmouth County Solid Waste Facility right now. So our partner recycler is American Iron and Metal. They are not an American company. They are a Canadian company that was started in Quebec about 50 years ago. The reason that the company chose American as the first part of its name was because at that time, American name was a lot more catchy than Canadian, and they felt that it would actually boost their business, which it did. They now have over 22 locations across Atlantic Canada, and they can accept all wire traps as is and recycle them all. And what the parts this metal is turned into is medical supplies used in military supplies, aviation, residential, rebar, and car manufacturing. So with our current study, we are doing that with Yarmouth County Solid Waste. We're doing a small pilot study with them, and we're hoping to remove those 120 tons of stockpile lobster traps under our current funding. Our goal is to also apply for funding to run a full year feasibility study with multiple municipalities to ensure that we have the right costing in place, to ensure that we have the right infrastructure for all locations in place, to ensure that we have the right logistics set up so that before we actually look to have a legislation or a regulation change and implement the program permanently, we want to be sure that we have it right, so that the industry isn't going to have any issues with service or having fluctuating costs that they can't absorb. So to do that, we're looking to apply to different funding pools, and what we understand is that in order to do this successfully, we would need a budget of about $350,000. So the basic principle of the program design that we are looking to run the study on is step one. The product would be purchased with a fee attached to it, very similar to our current tire recycling program, our oil recycling program that was launched in January of 2020, and similar to our other recycling programs that we have here in Nova Scotia and other provinces throughout Canada. So we'd be looking at adding a fee to the first seller of the wire trap or wire roll, and then the second step of that is that at the end of life for the fish harvester, when those traps become no longer safe to fish with and they want to dispose of them, they would be able to return them to a collection depot without a fee being attached to it. So there would be no tipping fees. They would return that free of charge. All of the funds that come from the fees, all those costs are, that fee covers those costs for the processing of those materials. And then the step 4 would be that they are turned into new products. So they're given a second life. So that material is given a second life and turned into new products. So what we did is we reached out to all of the producers of these materials, all of our wire trap builders and sellers throughout the Atlantic Canadian provinces. And we asked them, what kind of a program they felt most comfortable with. Would they be interested in an EPR type program where they would be sitting at the table with us, leading the program, making decisions, potentially also funding that program to support the industry? Or would they rather it be more like a product stewardship program where they hire an organization to administer the program like us, the Fishing Gear Coalition, and similar to the tire program again and that oil program is where there's an organization that oversees it and gets advice and support from that board rather than that board actually leading and directing and making the decisions. So So our industry has chosen that they would like to see a product stewardship program. They don't necessarily want to be leading it. They feel that someone else can do a better job at that, and they can focus more on, finding maybe new designs of wire traps or new types of rope and new materials that they can potentially test and sell to their customer. So they want a user pay product stewardship type program. And so looking at the 3 different programs, and we also want to investigate voluntary because, it's important that if the industry doesn't want it regulated, if they're willing to do it on a voluntary basis, that we would be willing to work with them to do that. So we wanted to figure out the costing for all 3 ways that the program could be run to determine, is this acceptable to the industry? Would our fish harvesters, and wire trap, manufacturers or sellers, would they be okay with adding this additional fee? So to help you understand, if the program is implemented as a user pay regulated product stewardship program, it will cost approximately $790,000 to run that program yearly. And it would be about a 14-cent fee added per kilogram to the rolls of wire. So, and the rolls of wire come in all different weights, all different lengths. And the reason we're looking at doing the program that way is because it is really the least expensive way. We would only be dealing with 5 importers into Nova Scotia, only 2 into New Brunswick. So it eliminates a lot of administration costs. And it also eliminates anyone from being able to double charge that fee to the client. So if it's only being added to the rolls of wire and not to the wire trap individually, it makes more sense to do that. So we are looking to run the study exactly that way to try to confirm if this costing is accurate. And if we've got the right type of infrastructure already set up with our municipal and private waste sites, or if we need to add infrastructure or need to support doing something a little differently in some of the locations. We understand that every single waste facility that we have, has a little bit of a different operation, or they might have a different setup. They all have different amounts of space that they work with. So we want to be sure that we don't put any additional stresses on any of our municipal sites, that we're making sure that we give them enough, time in between, that they can coordinate, etc. So with that being said, what we are looking to do is we are looking to apply for funding to run a full year feasibility study for $350,000. The FCM study waste stream management funding covers 50% of maximum eligible project costs up to $350,000 would be $175,000. So they'll cover 50%. With that total amount of $350,000, we estimate that we would be able to work with at least, 8+ municipalities, and we would be able to remove and recycle 115,000 plus wire traps, potentially. Unfortunately, with the FCM funding, the requirement is that there has to be a lead municipality, and that lead municipality has to contribute a cash contribution of 10%. That is $35,000. We realize that is a really huge ask. And so what we've been doing is we've been reaching out to other government departments. We reached out to Divert Nova Scotia because they have 2 different funding pools, the Nova Scotia Research and Development Fund, which we received permission to apply to that fund. We also asked if we could apply to their other fund for municipal waste energy funding, but unfortunately they said that we were not eligible to apply to that funding or support a municipality to apply to that funding. So we also sent a proposal to Department of Fisheries and Aquaculture to ask them to also support the project. And I recently reached out to a couple of other government departments asking them if they would help us with providing funding to support a lead municipality to be able to be part of this project so we can apply to the funding. I'm still waiting for that response. I'm also in conversations with Digby, who I have also, mentioned to them that, what we really, really need for this project and to be successful is to have enough municipal support. And really what we'd really love to be able to do is work with every municipality in the southwest region of Nova Scotia, because it's the longest fishing season. It we have 87 of our 161 fishing harbors in Nova Scotia located in Southwest Nova Scotia. So we have the largest volume of waste, and we want to make sure that we can provide the solutions for the fish harvesters in this area the most, because as you can see, the stockpiles that are located around different areas, it's because we have barriers. We have high tipping fees in some areas. Some areas have no tipping fees, which is fantastic because that does support those residents that have that waste to dispose of. But we don't have that consistency across our entire province. We want to be able to set up the program so that all fish harvesters, no matter where they're fishing in Nova Scotia and all other provinces for that matter, as we are able to move forward, to make sure that we're giving them locations that are within a reasonable distance, cost effective. We want to make sure that it'll be a self-funded permanent program forever to support the industry. We don't want to make mistakes and have failures and a program not succeed. We want to make sure that we do it the right way. And to be very honest with you, even after doing a full year feasibility study, we'd still be wanting to look to do a full year pilot study also, before implementing the program. We are looking to meet with the minister here in Nova Scotia sometime next month in February, just to kind of put our plan in front of our new minister to get his opinion on where he sees and what other maybe evidence or what other materials potentially we might require to get that implementation or that legislation change. It's not necessarily a regulation change, but it's a legislation change that allows that regulation and implementation of the program. And something that we've been learning through our research, because what we've done is we've researched every other program like this all throughout Canada. And one thing about Nova Scotia that stands out and is different from every other province in Canada is that we are the only province that looks at putting a disposal ban at our landfills on these products when we implement these type of programs. And what that means is it makes our programs more successful, because I also work for the UOMA program, the used oil program, part-time, and we have that program in all provinces across Canada. And in New Brunswick, we struggle. And in Newfoundland, we struggle. And in Prince Edward Island, we struggle because everyone can put that product in the garbage. There's no law against it. So even though they're paying for the program, they're still opting not to use the program because they feel it's easier for them to put it in the garbage bag and throw it out to the garbage man. And that really is unfortunate because, again, they're paying for the program when they buy the oil. So when they go to the garage and get an oil change, they're paying that EHF, that environmental handling fee, right, to cover the responsible disposal and recycling of that product. So that's why these programs are so successful in Nova Scotia. The tire recycling program, I've heard a few of, the fish harvesters come back and say, oh, I hate that program, and I'm like, why? And they're like, oh, well, it costs me money. I said, yes, but do you remember? Way back in the early 2000s, that program started in 96. So late before that program, every highway we drove down, there were tires in the ditches. In every exit we took, there were tires in the ditches. There were mounds of tires, burnt tires left on beaches from the teenagers having their bonfires, because we thought it was okay to burn them. We didn't realize that was, harmful to our environment. We didn't, at that time, but then we learned through the research that was done and through the, the program administration. And I mean, Divert Nova Scotia is running all of these programs other than the oil program, for our province. And they do a fabulous job. We have representation from them on our board, on our advisory committee. So they give us advice and support. We meet with them on a regular basis, to make sure that we're doing this the right way and that we're following, every rule that we should be following to ensure that we can set up a program like this that would be a permanent self-funded program. So I'm going to stop talking because I'm sure a few of you must have a couple of questions, or maybe one question at least, towards this project.
Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
So questions, folks? Anyone? Go ahead, Councillor Hatfield.
Thank you so much for providing us the opportunity to, get a personal rundown of what's involved with this program. It certainly helped to fill in the gaps. I'm interested to know whether or not you have the funding support from the municipality of Yarmouth.
From the municipality of Yarmouth.
Yes.
I'm meeting with them February 2nd.
Okay. So because you've identified the municipality of Yarmouth as potentially the lead municipality in funding this study. So I'm just trying to get a sense of where we are in the process. So do you have funding commitments at this point? Where are your funding commitments that have been secured to this point?
Okay. So we have no confirmed funding as of yet. We have potential. So we're not eligible to apply to the FCM funding unless we confirm a lead municipality. We presented to CBRM back in October. They were interested in being our lead municipality. Originally, we were only thinking that we would require a budget of $175,000. So they felt that they might be able to come up with that budget of $17,500. But then we had to change our budget and plan based on the information we learned from our project advisor through Divert Nova Scotia that it wouldn't be enough money to run a proper feasibility study. So then we went back to them and advised them of that. And I have honestly reached out at least 3 times and I haven't received any response yet. So what I did is because of that, because it is such a large number and, based on my conversations with other municipalities, we have Barrington and Shelburne are on board, but they can only offer in-kind support because they don't charge tipping fees for that material. They accept it free of charge for their residents. So they're not able to offer any budget. I confirmed with Victoria County, they will contribute $3,500, 1% of our total budget towards the project. Again, we even reached out to FCM and said, what if we had multiple municipalities give us the money, we put that together as a total? They won't allow that. It has to be one. So that's why I was thinking, well, what if, because I know, so, and I still don't know, I'm not educated on which municipalities feed into the Yarmouth County Solid Waste Facility. I thought that it was the municipality of Yarmouth, the town of Yarmouth, municipality of Argyle, and the municipality of Clare. Is that right? So those 4, no? Okay. So there's only 3 that feed into that facility. So one of my emails that I sent out was suggesting or asking, would it be possible for all of the municipalities in the area to contribute a portion to one municipality to get us up to that total? Like everyone do a contribution, but not give it to us, give it to the municipality that is interested in being the lead. Is there someone that would be, and it really doesn't matter who it is. And because all that lead municipality means is that that's the one putting in the 10% contribution. We want to work with all of the municipalities and coordinate anyone that has a transfer station and has a supervisor or a manager that's running that. We want to work with each one of them and coordinate with each one of them so that we can set it up properly for each location and make sure that they, because they're the ones who know what works for them in their facility. So we want to make sure we can work with each one of them individually throughout this project. So what we were hoping is that if we could get all of our Southwest Nova Scotia municipalities, I understand that Region of Queens, Shelburne and Barrington are not going to contribute any funding at all because they accept the product for free. But every other municipality charges either a tipping fee or charges like a flat, like Glendon charges $5 per ton to the fish harvesters because he knows he can get that back from the recycler. Digby charges $8 per trap because they have to dismantle the traps before their recycler takes them. So we have a recycler that will take it all as is. That, potentially could still offer the incentives. They even offer more of an incentive than the other recyclers. So we're hopeful that by everyone working together and everyone collaborating, that we can get the support so that we can, get enough money to one municipality so that we can at least apply and get something rolling. We have all the proposals are written and ready to go. And if there's funding that you're aware of that you can apply to, we'll write the proposal for you. We'll do the work for you. We won't, ask you to do, we'll do the work for you and you just submit it. We did that. So we're doing the same thing in New Brunswick as an example. And so the village of Grand Manan is going to be our lead municipality. But they don't have the $35,000 budget because we need the same amount of money to run a full feasibility study in their province also. But again, they don't have that budget. So there's a fund in New Brunswick called the New Brunswick Environmental Trust Fund. So we wrote a proposal for them to submit to get the funding so they could participate, and then we could apply to the other funding. So we did that in partnership with them, and we just did the work for them, and they just sent the email with the proposal. And we're happy to do that, to have your support, because we understand it's a lot of work to write these proposals. And we can write them so that it matches their mandates of what the requirements are to make sure that we, potentially could be successful at receiving money. I hope that gives a good explanation of what we're really looking for, because I know it's been a bit confusing with the back and forth and trying to provide you all with our project description, provide you with, our letters of support, because we're happy to take in-kind support also with regards to staff time and coordination. But we also want to ensure you that if you're able to come up with this money, every single municipality that contributes a portion of money, we will keep track of that and make sure that that amount of money is used at your municipality to pay staff and also to remove wire traps that may, be at your cost. So anything at your cost, we will cover under the money you offer into the program. So we'll make sure it comes back to your municipality, whether it's covering staff time or removal of the waste from maybe a location that your town looks after, something like that, right? We can do things like that to make sure that whatever the amount is compensated back to you. So there'd be no actual, cost to you if we can compensate by paying some of your staff time or what have you to equal that amount.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dares. And then CAO.
I'll let the CAO go first if I could.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay, I guess I'm maybe not understanding the problem entirely.
Okay.
And let me use Shelburne County as the example. Shelburne County will receive unwanted old lobster gear, fishing gear for free. So did that solve the problem in Shelburne County? And if not, how is this going to be better than what they're doing?
Because we're going to have a disposal ban. And it's against the law to illegally dump those traps anywhere, right? So once we have a disposal ban in place, what you'll find is most of our facilities, the bylaw officers, if they're seeing, it's going to be, more attention is going to be paid to it. It also means that if our fish harvesters, as an example, I'm going to use Digby as the example because we did the most retrieval of stockpiled traps from that location.
You've answered my question.
I'm sorry.
Councillor Dares has
yes, go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead, Councillor Dares.
Well, thank you. Just a quick correction, Sonia, that actually at the Yarmouth Solid Waste Park, it's $10 a ton is the cost to the fishermen to dispose of traps. It's not a lucrative business. It's nothing that the waste park is making money off of, I can assure you of that. The only concern, I guess, is are we investing in a program that is going to cost the fishermen more money? So is government sponsoring a program that at the end of the day is going to cost the fishermen more money to dispose of the trap? That's my first question.
It should actually cost them less, because if they're not paying a tipping fee and they're paying a small fee up front when they buy the product, that would be a lower cost than the tipping fee. Okay,
so is the, and I guess that was it. I wasn't doing the math. I just wanted to know if the upfront cost was less than $10 a ton.
Way less.
Okay. I'm aware of the fact that the number of traps being disposed at the solid waste park in Yarmouth has increased. It's tripled in the last few years. So our fishermen locally are doing a good job of returning the traps to the solid waste park rather than disposing of them otherwise. However, I see this as a natural progression of a way to recycle this material and take it out of the waste stream. I guess, when I look at the fact that Southwest Nova has 38%, I think, or 40% of the commercial fisheries in Canada is right here in Southwest Nova. It seems to me that that's something that we should be investing in. And I really wanted to follow up with the fact that you're looking for a lead community, a lead municipality, rather than and it's okay to partner to create a lead. Okay. Thank you. I think that's solved. That clarifies it for me. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay, CAO?
Yeah, that confused it for me. I'm missing something. So I'm looking at the fourth or fifth slide, and you've got fee collection options and estimated costs. And
Yes.
at the bottom row of that table,
yeah,
it shows, for instance, in one of the options,
You're beautiful. So you know,
the least expensive, $3.51 added to a 27 kilogram wire roll trap. So
wire
that's
trap.
added,
It's either a
right.
wire roll or a trap based on the weight of 60 pounds. Yes.
Right. So any fisherman who's buying a new trap, and they might buy 100 new traps, is going to pay $3.51 extra, more
Not
than
necessarily.
they do now?
It's going to depend. So our fee is actually not going to be on the trap. It's going to be on the roll of wire. So it will be up to the wire trap manufacturers because unfortunately there are multiple different types of wire that go into one trap. So there could be 5 different size rolls and different types of wire that they're using to build one trap. And that's why it makes most sense to do it on the roll and not on the trap.
Right. And so your table is kind of suggesting if the manufacturer passes the cost on to the fisherman, that the cost of the trap could go up between $3.50 to $8, depending on what kind of wires in the trap.
Yes. And
so back to Councillor Dare's question, right now, with no extra fee applied to the cost of the trap, and having to pay $10 at the end of life to the waste park, as opposed to paying, for a ton of lobster traps, I guess between $350 and $700. Is my math wrong?
At most times, our fish harvesters are replacing about 100 traps annually every year. Most of the guys that are fishing in Southwest Nova Scotia, the 351 would be at the largest, most expensive trap. So that's based on your largest, which is not the common one that's used. The common one that's used is the cheaper one with the lower weight. And the other thing that we're also seeing is that that's just the base. That's why we need to run the study so that we can confirm. The other part of this is that our recycler right now is in the works of setting up contracts with all of the municipalities and all of the sites so that they can be already ahead of the game before the program's implemented and already have the relationships, already have the contracts. They, again, are willing to accept these. Glendon told me that he just had a call from his recycler and they were not going to be paying him the incentive anymore. They were going to stop that. And they also really didn't want the traps. Everyone has been struggling to get rid of the tracks with John Ross and Sons. So our recycler, no issue at all. I can send them anywhere. They will take everything as is. And we know for a fact that that product is being recycled into usable things. They can prove that to us. No other recycler was able to prove that.
And are you paying? Are you? Excuse me. Are you paying that recycler, or is that recycler?
We are paying them. Yeah. So to remove the traps that are currently at your facility, we are paying them $10,000 to remove those. All the collection that we did on that map, that cost us $15,000 to do that.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions, anyone? We're good. Okay, thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Look forward to hearing back from you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, so now we have, Lindsay, did you make note that the deputy mayor hopped on here a little while ago?
Yep.
So we're aware of that. Okay, so staff reports. Start with the CAO. Any questions for the CAO? All jump at once. Go ahead, Councillor Dares.
Yeah, just one. What do you do with your spare time?
Okay, I'm going to turn my mic off. There's no spare time.
There isn't. That would be on a call with me. Okay, fire department. I'm not sure. Yep, Mike is here. Chief is here. Any questions there? Chief, I see you had somebody else start yesterday or this week. There he is.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah. We've hired, we have a new hire now. We hired the replacement for Kevin Taylor as we promoted Kevin up to a platoon chief. So he's going to be starting in a couple of weeks. But Hank is retiring on Saturday, is his last day, the 29th. So officially, after Hank retires, Kevin Taylor takes over the Delta platoon position as the platoon chief for that department.
Any questions for the chief? Councillor Dares and Councillor Cleveland, or Councillor Bell Hatfield, and then Councillor Cleveland. Gloria.
Hi there, Mike.
Hi.
Just well, congratulations to Hank Nickerson in his retirement. I hope you'll pass that along to all of us who are old enough.
I certainly will.
Yes. And I was really interested to see your report about volunteer recruitment as well. And I note that in the last year, there's been 7 new recruits in the volunteer service. And I guess because I'm getting on in age, the question I have for you is how many retirements are you seeing over that period of time? And can you speak to what the relative level of the volunteer service is?
How many, just to understand the question, how many volunteers do I assume will be retiring over the next while?
Well, yeah, I mean, I go from active service to emeritus service.
I've got, let's see, probably, I can think of maybe 4, senior firefighters that have over 40 years of service. I've got some guys with 45 and 55 and 60, I think. I've asked them to stay around as long as they reasonably can, because they're really good for morale. They talk about the history, and they're good. They're a good benchmark for the younger guys and girls to set themselves against. So we kind of take a bit of a different direction with the expectations from those members, obviously, but I kind of expect those senior members in the next couple of years. I suspect they're going to start kind of changing directions and looking to retire from the service. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I hope that you can find opportunities to keep them engaged in whatever way that they're able to continue to serve. But I guess I'm really thrilled to know that recruitment seems to be going well, and that you're happy with the individuals that are stepping forward to serve the community. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I actually did some follow-up calls today. I've got I said in my report I have 2, but I have 3. I think I was wrong. Persons that are interested in joining. They're in various stages of the onboarding process. A lot of them, or a couple of them, decided around the holidays they were interested, and obviously it was busy then. We needed them to get medicals and those sorts of things, so it takes a bit of time. But even those people that are interested in coming on, or some of them already have some training in the industry, which is helps us on that learning curve. And we've got a really good group of new firefighters that are in the level 1 course right now. They're really engaged. I made it very clear, and the staff has too, that there's opportunity here for our volunteers, and that goes a long way for their interest potentially down the road. I mean, obviously we can't hire everybody, but the fact that we're willing to do our very best to hire from within, it goes a long way, and they appreciate that.
thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Councillor Cleveland?
Yep, you've answered my question, actually. I was just asking about who's in the pipe and how it's looking otherwise. So thank you very much, Chief.
You're welcome. No, it's going well. And we're still getting, those people, those emails coming in with some interest. So, we're going to keep this recruitment thing going as long as you'll help us, Wade, which, so far you haven't said no. So we should be all right.
Councillor Dares, did you have your hand up? No, you're good? Okay. Anything else for the chief? Good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Operational services. I think Chad is here. Yes, he is. So any questions for Chad? Councillor Dares?
Yes, just one. Wondered if there had been any assessment of the need for sidewalks as far as a priority on Harrington Avenue as a result of the motor vehicle accident that occurred there with a pedestrian.
Yes, if you recall a few months back, I think I did a high level assessment in that area and provided council with, I think, a rough estimate. And we've since escalated that to the engineering department, and I think they're going out to get consultation on design and budget.
Okay, and I guess what prompted my question was the increased development in that area where they're opening up the road. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I'm not going to say it, Your Worship, but you're muted.
I thought you were all reading my lips. Go ahead, Councillor Bell.
Thank you. And thank you, Chad. I was looking at the transit report, and I noticed ridership is up almost 25%, which is amazing year over year. So clearly the service is being well used. And I also noticed this week that there are some mechanical issues and it's offline temporarily. And I just wondered if you could update us on that and whether you have any idea of how long the service might be affected.
I received, well, first off, yeah, it was unfortunate, but both buses were out for maintenance purposes. It's rare that happens. But Richard, our transportation supervisor, texted me a few moments ago. We've received one bus back, so service will resume tomorrow morning.
Good. Anything else for Chad? Good. Thank you. Planning and economic development. So Natalie is with us. Do we have any questions for Natalie? Go ahead, Councillor Hatfield. Councillor Heather. There we go.
Not a question, Natalie, but just kind of a comment. Reading through the report, I just noticed the long list of bylaws and policy reviews that are ongoing. It appears every day. I don't know how you get through it all. So just like kudos to the staff for that, because that's pretty dry, monotonous stuff sometimes, and not the most rewarding and exciting stuff in one's work. So just just kudos to you and the staff for all that. Pam, you're muted.
Again? Okay, so engineering, and I don't see Mark Brophy on. Is Mark on?
I'm here.
Oh, you were. I don't have your, funny. I don't have you at the bottom of my screen here. Any questions for our engineer? Anything you want to share, Mark? Good?
I think I'm good.
Okay. Oh, I see you got Newfoundland in the background.
Yeah, we're under renovations downstairs.
Okay, I guess we're good there. Finance department. Jerry is on, so if there's any questions for Jerry, I think we'll have time later in the agenda as well, because we're going to start a little bit of the budget process, at least the upfront, how we do these types of things. And Jerry, you're staying on too, because there are a couple agenda items around donations to organizations, and I understand when we say, do we have the money? The answer is no this time. So we don't. Can we find it? So anything for Jerry? We're good. Okay. And Yarmouth Recreation. So Frank is here. Any questions for Frank? What's been going on this winter, Frank?
Well, I did get some good news today, and I want to thank the town for a lovely letter of support. We expressed interest in becoming one of Nova Scotia's most active communities. So it was kind of a quick turnaround, and we did get support from the town and the municipality with our expression of interest. And quickly, I reached out to as many community groups and even some town and municipal departments for some letters of support around active transportation. And I had 11 letters of support within 2 days. So we sent that expression off to the province, and proud to say we have been selected one of 7 communities vying for a large grant where 3 of those 7 communities will be awarded a Nova Scotia Communities on the Move grant. And it could be funding of up to $100,000 with no matching funds from the Recreation Department, because of all the great work that is already going on in the community around active transportation. So pretty excited about that. I think we stand a really good chance of being selected. So thanks for your support.
Good stuff. Councillor Dayers?
Yeah, it is great news. Frank, as a result of the accessibility committee meeting the other night, there was one concern that was expressed regarding Milo Boat Club. Actually, there were a couple of concerns, but I believe you're addressing the one of the ramp for the accessible ramp to into the water. I think that's on the agenda. But one of the concerns that was raised was the accessibility to the second floor of the facility, and I fully understand that it's a very old facility, and installation of an elevator is probably not feasible. But anyway, just that I did assure them that I would bring it to your attention that the accessibility to the second floor for some people who would like to attend events there is an issue. So
for sure,
I'm only raising it as an issue. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and totally hear it. We had looked into possibly installing a chairlift, and I'm not taking it off the radar. It's on the radar. It's probably not going to happen anytime in the next year or two, but if we did install a chairlift, we would need to build onto the building to make a larger landing point at the top of the stairs. So it's definitely on the list. Totally understand.
Good. And anyone else? Any questions for Frank? Go ahead there, CAO.
Yeah, just on the Milo Boat Club, and I mean that that situation is very challenging. I acknowledge that for sure, Frank, and how you're going to eventually be able to address that. Do you do programming in that space, or is that space just for rental for the community? Because we do have accessible alternatives within the community, in the municipality, and in the town. And so I guess what I'd say is if it's not accessible, we do have alternatives, and maybe programming should be shifted to those facilities where people can access it, and maybe groups who maybe there's nobody within their group who has an accessibility issue might make themselves make use of Milo in the interim. It's not a perfect solution, but I just hope we're not programming in there and therefore shutting people out?
No, the majority of our program use is summer months for canoe kayak programs, day camp programs, and that sort of thing. The other 10 months of the year is basically our rental groups for party showers, and we have, when we've run seniors activities, we know that it's an issue with people with mobility issues, so we have gone to other facilities around that are more accessible. The Lions Club is a good partner with us that we've done some seniors activities there. So we know it's a challenge, but we'll pick away at it. And I guess we got 7 years to become fully accessible. So it's definitely going to be a challenge.
Councillor Dares?
Yes, just to clarify, this was not a programming concern. It was more of groups that have rented it for things like dance classes or Pilates or whatever, that they're being held there. And I think the attraction to using the boat club is probably the rental fee.
Good. Anything else for Frank? Okay, well, good. Thanks, Frank. Okay, down to business. 9A, 55 plus games funding. There's, see a motion on this one, but Councillor Dares.
So there is no motion because, quite honestly, the deficit or the shortfall was covered by a budget, YASTA budget. But I wanted to use it as a segue into, I think Councillor Cleveland is going to be addressing an issue about the curling event that's proposed. And I just want to talk again about the success, the things that YASTA does, and the success of these events in this area. My understanding with the curling event, and sorry, Wade, if I'm stealing your thunder, but there was no proposal submitted. It was the case of the Canadian Curling Association calling us in Yarmouth and saying, do you want this? If you wanted it, it's yours, which is a total turnaround from the normal procedure, which is a bid procedure where you're bidding on these events. So, but on another note from the 55 plus games, the president of the National 55 plus Games Association has contacted the local organizers and asked if they can, if they will provide him with the online registration program that was used, because they were really impressed with that, and they don't have that nationally. So they broke new ground here in Yarmouth, and we may yet see the 55 games come back here in 2023. But there is no funding request, so that's why there's no motion. Thank you.
Good stuff. I click it when it's dark, when it's bolded, and expect a motion to come up. So it's all okay. So fireworks. I have a recommended motion there to recommend that town of Yarmouth abolish fireworks within the town limits. Okay. Can't remember how that got on, probably from a previous meeting. What are we thinking, folks? Go ahead.
If I will, I would never make or second that motion as it's worded. I do believe we need to investigate, and I think the town should investigate fireworks within the town limits. I don't have a particular problem with fireworks, and I know there are those with various animals that do, and so we have to be cognizant of that and understanding of it. I do believe that last summer we certainly had a problem with purchased fireworks being set off at all hours of the night. I was awoken more than once living in central Yarmouth by fireworks being set off on any random Tuesday at midnight or 11 p.m. or whatever. And I do think that needs to be looked at. If we can look into any kind of the quiet so-called silent. It's not exactly silent, but the silent fireworks, that's worth looking at as well. But I certainly wouldn't recommend that we abolish fireworks altogether. And thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Heather?
I guess the thing that comes to my mind with this is thinking back to pre-COVID days was the parade of lights in the harbor with the boats and the fireworks. And so the way this is worded, would that prevent that ever coming back and occurring? And that was certainly a phenomenal event, and brought tourists galore, really. I know lots of people that came down just for our parade of lights and the off of the boats in the harbor. So just something that we should kind of keep in mind as we look at that.
Thank you. CAO?
So, Your Worship, at the December council meeting, there was a motion approved by council that council directs staff to investigate the use of fireworks within town boundaries, especially pertaining to times and locations, and that task has been assigned to the fire chief, and so he will report back to council on that. This motion, I don't know the origins of it, the one that is on today's agenda, but if that is the direction council wanted to take, that would require a bylaw amendment, or a bylaw in itself, not simply a motion at council. So let's wait and hear back from the chief, if you will, on the work that he's been asked to do, and take it from there if that's acceptable.
Yeah, I think that's probably the wise thing to do. So we can just ignore this motion. Council's okay with that. Go ahead, Councillor Dares.
Just to add to that, I believe that it wasn't to ban scheduled fireworks. It was to ban the ones that are set off every Saturday night. I've received complaints from on this past Saturday from people that were setting off, lived next door to people that were setting off fireworks. So it is an issue, especially if you have pets and you're unaware of the fact that this is going to occur. But I believe that the intent was not to affect, to follow up on what Councillor Heather Hatfield had said, it's not to affect the scheduled fireworks such as the Parade of Lights or perhaps a Natal Day or a July 1st.
Yeah, so when people have time to prepare, it can make a little bit of a difference anyway, that you have to have the animals in the house and you're watching them. I'll tell you, I had on two separate occasions, I had families of veterans. That's the one that hit me, aside from the pets, because I have pets, and I know of a couple that had to be put down because of fireworks, because they run so hard and so far that they wear their pads off their feet, off their paws. So yeah, so the veterans, and the PTSD and the, when we're not talking about World War I or II, we're talking about Afghanistan and all those. It's the things we don't think about, because we're blessed to have soldiers that go there and do that. But it's a concern on a lot of levels. So I'm glad the chief will look into that. And we might want to look into other areas. So are we okay, council, to let that go until? Okay, good stuff. All right, thank you. Cameras. So 9C, the recommended motion there is to recommend that council direct staff to look into the feasibility of putting up cameras in select positions within the town. So I'm not sure who put that one on. I'll start. I'm not against cameras, but cameras just move the issue. They just move the problem somewhere else. There is no way we can cover the entire town. There's no way. It's expensive. And as soon as somebody knows that it's covered somewhere, something else is going to happen somewhere else. I think that in my 9.5, almost 10 years, it keeps getting brought to the table, and it's not because we don't want cameras or we don't want the safety issue. We don't want to see what's happening. It's because is it going to actually work? It's expensive, and I don't know. That's where I am. So, Councillor Dares, you might have something different there, but
Yes, I would like to comment only that the technology has improved significantly over the years, and I think that with the improvement in the technology, there's also been a significant reduction in the cost of having these things installed. I can speak to very quickly to a couple of examples, and I know that in the town of Digby, a strategically placed camera probably saved a significant lawsuit because the complainant's version of the events was contradicted by the fact that there was a video coverage of the event. And I can't speak any more than that, except that I was involved with the investigation during my tenure with the internal investigation section of the RCMP. And it would have been quite a nightmare for a few people had there not been a camera installed. It also, and I know of several other places where strategically placed cameras, once again, have identified culprits in regards to damage. So I wouldn't rule it out. I think that there's some value to it, and I think it should be investigated.
So the strategically placed. So, for example, we have it at the skate park, and we've actually used it. We've used those a couple times, and they've worked at the skate park. But I guess, go ahead there, Jeff. I'm probably wrong. Was I wrong?
No, you're not entirely wrong, but that's not a security camera. That's a webcam. And
Okay.
That was installed to promote the use of the skate park and to allow parents, if they were wondering, are their kids at the skate park, are their kids at the skate park, to be able to see that. But you're right when you say that camera has resulted in identifying on one occasion, at least one occasion, somebody who created some vandalism at the park.
So we'd have to figure out why we want to, what's the end goal of putting up cameras. So where are we on this, folks? Go ahead, Councillor Dares.
Yeah, I guess, from my perspective, the deterrent, especially in high incident areas. I agree with you. You can't provide video surveillance in the entire town, but you can, as I say, find strategic locations, and the technology. In recent years, we've upgraded the camera system at Junipros, for example. And before, what you'd have to send to Ottawa and try to have enhanced to identify whether the person was even male or female, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Now the technology is such that even at night you can get really good facial identification. So the technology has improved, and I think that being, as I say, I would support staff taking a look at it to see if there's a value in strategically placed units.
But my question is, what are strategically placed units? Like, is that up to staff to decide what they are?
Well, I think in some cases you involve the police department to see, where there's been significant numbers of incidents. Like, for example, at the Mariner Center, there were security cameras throughout the building, and although they were of questionable grade or effectiveness, they were certainly a great deterrent to prevent vandalism.
Thank you. CAO?
Yeah, my question was whether we should maybe refer this to the Police Advisory Committee for discussion there, where the police are present, citizens are present, and some councillors as well, to see if what the thought is there. Because, it would have to be a question to take to the police in terms of locations, because they're the ones that get the calls, and and sometimes we don't know, we don't know the number of calls or the repeat locations unless there's significant issues, and so maybe that would be an approach to get the ball rolling.
I would agree with that one. Councillor Bell?
Yeah, that actually aligns with my thoughts on the matter, which is that I think that cameras offer a deterrence. The presence of cameras offers a deterrence. It's not 100%, but I think that there is some value in having cameras that are strategically placed, again, and they may be cameras that don't necessarily have to stay in the same place forever either. But I think I think it's best to put it in the hands of the Police Advisory Committee and allow that conversation to be held there and for their recommendations to come back to council. So I would make that a motion.
Okay, thank you. Have I got a seconder? Councillor Dares. Okay, any more discussion on this one? So the motion is to send to the Police Advisory Board. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Oh, wait, I didn't say half, sort of. Your face is saying. Okay, cameras. Okay, Facade Society presentation request that council have the Facade Society present at a future meeting. So we did have, okay, so you've got, so Councillor Cleveland, did you just make that motion?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, and second by Councillor Heather Hatfield. So we did, I did speak to Lindsay because we had two that wanted to present, and I believe one needed to present, trying to think of which one it was, the accessibility plan. Okay, so we want to make sure that they, so is council okay with doing two at the next committee of the whole, having two presentations? So accessibility and facade. Okay, so this one is the accessibility for February committee of the whole. Lindsay, is that good?
Yep.
Okay, all right. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you, folks. Facade, snow operations, and that's Councillor Cleveland. The recommended motion is to recommend the council direct staff to investigate how we can improve the service level for snow removal from accessible parking spaces, including consideration of the timing, equipment, and manpower required to meet a higher standard. Okay, so Councillor Cleveland's going to make that motion. Second by the Deputy Mayor. Okay, discussion?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Your Worship, this all springs from a Facebook post that was made on the 18th of January, and I'm not a fan of Facebook posts because if you have something that is on your mind, just reach out. Those kind of medium, especially Facebook and those kind of things, degenerate very, very quickly and turn into just slamming sessions. And so, you know, that's certainly not the way to do things. However, that being said, fair is fair. And as someone who isn't disabled, I find that what happens is you look with a different eye. You're not seeing things that maybe other people are seeing more clearly because they're dealing with it. And so I felt that the only way to address this, and we could send it to the accessibility committee as well, but I think it is fair for us to at least take a look at perhaps just how we possibly can do better. I mean, The Facebook post was posted a couple of days after a major storm. We were working our way through that, and so to be fair, I do certainly believe that our staff do a fantastic job. It's just sometimes things do get missed, and if it got missed, fair enough. But it's just something that should be investigated, and so that's why I made the motion. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hatfield?
Well, thank you. I can support the motion to bring it to the attention of our staff, not necessarily to provide a higher service, but to be aware and bring it back to staff so that they can be reminded that there are disability concerns. But I am concerned about the idea that somehow there's a standard that we're missing. So the question I guess I have is, in terms of operational services, I suspect that they do have standards of service, and delivery times are probably part of those standards. And whether or not they were met on that day, I think that all of us have to appreciate that we don't live in a perfect world. And so with a great deal of respect for the staff and for the individuals who registered the concern, I certainly would like to see it moved forward. But I don't like the idea of attaching a value to it, that somehow the service was substandard. I don't know if it was substandard because I'm not sure what the standard is. I know it was a snowstorm, and I know that as an able-bodied person, I had to make decisions about whether or not I was safe and comfortable, going out and about. So I think that Facebook can be a very corrosive place in which to have a discussion. And I don't think that Facebook should be driving our discussions at council. I think that we should be responding but not reacting. So I can support the motion with the intention that this is not any reflection on what staff is doing and how they are maintaining the services in the community.
Thank you. So I agree with what you both said. First of all, and I'm glad you both mentioned it, Facebook is not, I know this upsets some people listening, Facebook is not the place where you get a hold of counselors or staff, or especially, I just felt like there was some shaming going on. I know I was tagged in a whole bunch of them, and there's a way that you get a hold of council, and there's emails for that, and there's phone numbers for that, and that's how you find us, or you send an email to our admin, or any number of ways, but to shame, and it wasn't for me. I should probably just stop talking, but I won't. For me, it wasn't just that one post that got out of control. It was the posts around how is somebody going to get out of their vehicle, an able-bodied person, when they pull up against the snowbank because the snow hasn't been removed. Well, they're not. And I think folks forget that we have snowstorms. We don't have much of them. Actually, I just wrote, it'll be out next Wednesday in the flyers, the Saltwire Southwest article that I do once a month, and I covered all these things. And we have to remember, we're in a world of instant gratification where folks want everything taken care of right away. I think we forget that our staff members are out 24 hours a day before the storm, during the storm, after the storm, every hour on the hour, working hard. There's overtime. There's only so many hours legally that a plow driver can work before they have to stop. We don't have an infinite number of staff, unlike, Jeff's going to roll his eyes when I say this, but when you go out into the county, the province is taking care of that. They're not doing that inside of the town limits. It's our staff, it's our taxpayers that pay for it, it's our equipment, and if one piece of equipment breaks down and one person can't come to work for whatever reason, especially during COVID, then it throws everything off. So we just have to be a little bit more gracious and patient and kind to those that are doing that hard work in the worst possible conditions. And we also, I will say this very clearly, there's not one of us that doesn't agree that we need to take into consideration, accessibility issues, that we need to keep looking harder and digging deeper and trying to do better. So I know every one of us is glad that this is on the table so that we can actually do that. But sometimes it's how it gets to the table. We can't react to social media posts like that. We just can't. So yeah, it was a little upsetting because, it wasn't just the accessibility parking. It was, how do you get out of your vehicle if the snow has not been removed? Well, you don't. You drive around the corner and you find a spot. It's called common sense. And it's also an understanding that there will be inconveniences during and after snowstorms. And we wish we could fix that, but we can't. So we will do our very best. We'll have staff look into this for the accessibility piece, but also the others, and see where we come. So that's where I am on it. Sorry for the rant, but it's it's hard. Anybody else? Go ahead, Councillor Dayers.
Yeah, just quickly, I mean, as it, with everybody else, I was tagged in that post, and I will say this, having dealt with the person that posted that, the original post in the past, especially at the Mariner Center, I can understand that it was born totally out of frustration. It's a protective mother.
I agree.
And
I agree.
Yeah. What I was disappointed in was the probably 50 comments that followed. Yeah. And there was no need of that. No. But I will say that, I'm not going to react to Facebook posts either. If you want to talk to me, then talk to me. And I do get calls and I do react to them, but I'm not going to respond to hate book.
And I fully agree. It wasn't about the post. It was everything that happened after that just puts everybody, including our staff, in a bad light, and that's simply not the case. So, all right, are we ready for the vote? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you, folks. 2022 We Care Radiothon. So the recommended motion is to recommend that the town of Yarmouth donate to the 2022 Yarmouth Hospital Foundation's We Care Radiothon.
If I may, I'm going to remove myself from this because of my involvement with the Radiothon.
Sure. Okay. So there's a couple things here. First of all, we do this every year, and I think Jeff or Jerry, you can hop in, but I think it's $1,000. It's been standardly about $1,000. But it's not coming out of our grants to organizations. And I did ask Jeff and Jerry to take a peek at where we are with regard to those grants so far. And I'll let them speak to it. We haven't got money, it's for sure, but it's something that we've always found the money for in this one. So Jeff or Jerry, do you want to?
I'll let Jerry take that if he knows the answers. I don't recall off the top.
I know in the past we have supported it and donated. I can't recall off the top of my head which GL number we have used. I did take a look and notice that grants organizations is a couple thousand over the budget. We did reduce the budget down to 35,000 this year. I think we spent 37 or 38,000 of that line. But can we make the donation? A few requests like this per year, yeah, we can always find the money to get it done. Just don't ask 100 times.
Yep.
So we've got. I noticed one thing, and I did check into that while you were talking earlier. And the one thing that tweaked my memory was your comments around fireworks. So we normally budget some money for fireworks, and we didn't have fireworks this year. So there's a little bit of money there that we can use. And we'll be under budget there. So being a little over on the grants won't, by a few thousand won't. We can make that work.
Okay. So here's the thing. How do we? There's two things. Like, how do we? And Mike may be able to speak up on this. How do we help the community understand that we have to go through a process for this? I think we're getting pretty good at it. Are we, Jerry? Like, are there less reactive requests coming per year?
I think so. Most of them run through Lindsay. So, I mean, but yeah, I do believe that for the most part, people are meeting, deadline requests and getting on that master list when you look at and review and assign how we want to spend that 35,000 in the budget.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dares?
Thank you. Two things. Number one is perhaps the Radiothon organization should be encouraged to submit an application for funding in the future, just so that we have it on our agenda. But secondly, I think there's value added to this. If the town makes a contribution and extends that challenge to other municipal units, it adds some value to the Radiothon. So I think that I'd be prepared to support and I'd make a motion that we make a donation. I'm not sure what you suggested. Your worship, was it 1,000?
I did say 1,000 because that's what it's been in the past. And then we always, they'll probably make a phone call to me or the deputy to speak. And we always put the challenge out to the other municipal units. So you're bang on that one. So the $1,000 would probably do it.
Okay, well, that would be my motion. Thank you.
Okay, I have a seconder, Deputy Mayor. Hey, any further discussion on this one? Hey, all those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Okay, the next one is, this is another one for Jerry. The coldest night of the year, to recommend that the town of Yarmouth donate $500 to the coldest night of the year campaign by Shift House. So the same thing, only Jerry, I think last year I took it out of my mayor's fund, or one of the last couple of years, because I didn't want to come to council, and I said I would just take it out of the mayor's fund, which doesn't have, at least I had a couple $100 left in that one.
No, I think you're right, and there is a couple thousand or a couple $100 left in that mayor's fund budgeted. So if you're looking to do the 500, I think we'll be okay there.
For the mayor's fund?
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't have to do this through council, this one.
If you want to go through the mayor's fund, you wouldn't have to. Okay,
well, we can do that. That's fine. Okay, that was easy.
Yeah.
Meadowfields Community School Playground Replacement Project, to recommend that council provide a letter of support to Meadowfield School for their playground replacement project. Lindsay, I think that's done up, is it not?
The letter is complete. I will send after the meeting if council passes the motion.
Right on. Okay, Councillor Dares, did you make that motion? Councillor Hatfield, both of them, one of them, both of them, seconded it. Okay. All those did you want to speak, Gil?
Yeah, just quickly. I know that this is a school playground, but it's. I can assure you that it's used extensively on weekends and throughout the summer by the by the larger community.
Mm.
And I think it's a really worthwhile project. The actual playground has been condemned. It's been closed for some time now, which is unfortunate. So I really wanted to emphasize the support is really necessary. Thank you.
That's 20 years old, I think, isn't it? Over 20 years old. Wow.
Yeah, and I've been on the school advisory council all that time. So, we saw it happening. We just didn't see it happening that fast.
Okay, good. So we made the motion, seconded. Any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Correspondence. The correspondence is Nova Scotia Public Works, the OHV pilot project. And I just mentioned to Jeff briefly that it's under correspondence. We got a letter that said no, they're going to extend the project for 2 more years. So they have enough information, because they don't have enough information from the places that are already doing it successfully, it would appear. So I can't leave this one, and I just wanted to have a little bit of a discussion. I'll leave it if you tell me to leave it, but it's been going on for 2 years. We've been begging. Go ahead, CAL. Calm me down.
No, finish what you were going to say if you want, and then I'll give you a perspective.
Okay, I think that's all I wanted to say is that this is. I know there's a lot of logistics that have to fall in place, but it can't be rocket science. They're doing this all over the country in different places. They're doing it successfully, and we're being told, no, we can't have OHVs on the roads that incidentally we pay for. So go ahead.
So, Your Worship, you'll recall, I think it was December, just before the pandemic, that the leadership from TIR came to Yarmouth. They used to do an annual tour and meet with council and hear what some of the local issues and priorities were. And Paul LaFlèche was the deputy minister at the time. Diane Surrett and several other of the high level officials from TIR were present. And this issue came up. And the issue is not about will it work or can it work. The issue is about having the legislation in place to allow it to work. In Nova Scotia, ATVs are regulated or legislated under an Off-Highway Vehicle Act that is administered through Lands of Forest or Department of Forestry or whatever they're called now. And the Motor Vehicle Act is administered through Transportation Public Works. So 2 different departments involved and 2 pieces of legislation. And at that time, it wasn't possible, because of the known impending election, to get the legislation done, to bring the 2 departments together and figure out how to put proper legislation in place that would allow ATVs to operate under a set of rules under the Motor Vehicle Act, because the Motor Vehicle Act regulates streets. And the problem is that the pilot was coming to an end, and there was no next step because there was no legislation. So the pilot ends, you've got a success, and now you've got to stop it because you have no way to allow it to continue other than extend the pilot until you have, the election is passed, the government's in place, and you bring the ministers up to speed, staff get juggled. And so, as I mentioned, Paul LaFlèche used to be in TIR. Now you've got a different department name, you've got a different deputy minister, you've got a different minister. And so this has to get elevated on the legislative agenda of the current government and completed before the 2-year extension on the pilot expires, or we'll be right back in the same place. So I have to believe that staff within TIR are working to get the legislation ready. And I think that's really the question, is are they getting the legislation? Are they working on legislation? To say that they're evaluating the outcome of it, I find that hard to believe, They've had 2 years of success, and it's successful in many other provinces. It's not whether it can be successful, it's how do we enable it? How do we make it legal in this province? And getting the lawyers from the two departments and the ministers and getting it on the legislative agenda and getting it passed. So I think that's the issue, and where we should be focusing our pressure is to make sure that that work is happening, because many of the players have changed since that meeting 2 years ago.
So do we need to do, here goes a letter again, but do we need to do a letter to, we have to ask that question. We have to ask the question. It's too much. So who's that?
Your worship, you can get a meeting. Royd and Trainer, you can reach out and you can have this type of meeting, I'm sure, within a week's notice. And if you need to follow it up with correspondence so that it's on the record, you just tell them that that's what you're going to do, and then he receives your letter and there's no surprise, and you're not waiting for a written letter back. Have the discussion and see where this sits. He was in the room 2 years ago, and he's still within the department and can probably provide the answer.
Okay, I'll do that. Anyone else on this one? Okay, good to go then. Additions. Okay, 11A, the National Curling, and that would be Councillor Cleveland.
Well, I have some exciting news that Bill couldn't help but mention before, and that is that we've been given the 2022 Canadian National Seniors Curling Tournament. If any of you remember the mixed tournament that we did, it was wonderful. This is going to be double that. And to top it all off, it's going to be in early December. So can you imagine an influx of people this year? This is this year we're talking. We're talking this year, December 5th to the 10th, 2022. Can you imagine the influx of people with the tree lit and, Frost Park lit and the town looking wonderful and in need of people here to buy some things? It's going to be a very, very exciting time. It's going to be involving the Mariner Center with ice. Obviously, it'll involve the curling club as well. There is a funding request. Now, I'm not going to, what I'll do is ask that be moved to our actual council meeting, because you need information. I forwarded you just an overview and a letter of request for support. We'll be looking for about $10,000 from each of the municipalities involved, plus the group of my mind goes blank. The group of hotels that we have. They have their own association as well. So it's kind of a split that they're going to be asking for. I believe that with what was received by the town of Yarmouth, that there was an attached budget, but I didn't have that to give to anybody else. So there should be everybody should have a chance to look this all over before they want, any kind of a vote for support or anything. But I did want to put the bug in your ear. It's going to be a pretty exciting thing. They did call us looking to see whether or not we were capable of running this, and we accepted that. I was talking with a very excited Neil McKenzie earlier today, and this really could turn into something pretty significant. And you know what a great job we do at these kind of things. So this is going to be fun, and so it's something to look forward to towards the end of 2022.
Councillor Dares?
Yes, thanks. And Councillor Cleveland, I do want to repeat my apology for stealing your thunder if I did. But I do know that the estimate economic impact of these events is somewhere between $1 million and $1.5 million for an event that takes place over a few days. So it's a great initiative, and kudos to Yasta and to Councillor Cleveland for those type of events being brought to Yarmouth.
Go ahead, Councillor Heather, and then CAO.
Yeah, I just want to echo the same thing, Councillor Cleveland. This is wonderful news, and congratulations to GASDA and all those involved. How many days will this be for? Do you know? Do you have a number of the length of time?
The actual tournament would run from the 5th of December through the 10th. So that's 5 days. And plus, of course, you get the shoulders, people coming in, people going. Yeah. So it's a fairly long stretch. You're talking all told, probably a week. So 5 days for the actual event, and then moving in and moving out.
Good. Thanks.
Good. CAO?
Your Worship, I can't help but just give my opinion. This has got nothing to do with anything other than just my thought that, you know, this comes at a perfect time. Like, there's no better time for our area to host people. This is good for hotels. This is the time of year when people are shopping, you know, with intent and looking for unique things for loved ones. So it'll be good for the retail sector. It is the best time for our lobster season. So we can put on the hospitality in a way that sometimes we got to go looking for the lobsters for summer events. So I think this is just fantastic for the community that we've been offered this opportunity.
Good stuff. Okay, so we're going to, we don't have to make a motion here, then you're just going to put it on the agenda for the council.
Council? Yeah, I think that's only fair.
Yeah, we couldn't make a decision today because we didn't have the information. But Jeff, is that how that works? They needed something in February. Can't remember what it was.
Yeah, so Neil had indicated to me that, looking forward here, I'm looking at the letter, end of February if possible. So the February council meeting would be plenty of time. And I did send you an email a few minutes ago that includes that email from Neil, as well as the draft budget. I didn't realize that you didn't have that, so my apologies for that. So you'll have the draft budget and the documents that Councillor Cleveland circulated, and we can place that on the February council meeting for your consideration.
Good. Good stuff. Thank you. Okay, so B, deer management. That would be Councillor Heather.
Yeah, I would.
Heather, you're on mute. I don't know
sorry.
how that happened. You started off right. No, you started off right. You must hit a button.
I must.
Start again.
Yeah, okay. I'd just like to make a motion that staff investigate the managed deer hunt that is presently taking place in Truro and report back to council if this management strategy would be something that we could implement here or follow up with.
I'll second that. Wait a minute, I can't. Okay, Deputy Mayor. All right.
Okay. So I had a citizen approach me, again about concerns about the deer, which we all have, and it was just interesting that this week or maybe perhaps last week, they started and I managed deer call in Truro using bow and arrows. They've got 4 certified bow and arrow hunters hired to come in and do this. They have worked in consultation with the Department of Natural Resources and Renewables, and they're doing this all together. And they're in the process of doing it now, and it goes, I think, until mid-February, I think it ends. So I think it's really important that we kind of look at that, kind of have a conversation with the folks in Truro, see how they were able to actually work with Department of Natural Resources in their town, which was quite amazing, and what we can, is that something that we can do? And one of the things that kind of struck me when I was listening to the information on CTV the other night, they got attention for this because they had such a high population of deer in their town, and the number she gave was 6 per square kilometers, and I'm like, I'm sure we have way more than that. If that's what you need to get into this program, we got it, right? But they had put together a management strategy committee, and I think they've had it in place for about maybe 2 years, and they've been working on all these kinds of things in order to get to where they are today. So I just thought it was something that we should kind of, talk to our friends in Truro and see what the secret is and what we can do.
Good staff. Other Councillor Hatfield. Councillor Bell.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing the issue forward on the table again. I certainly concur. I think we all do that the deer population in Yarmouth is out of our control. I would like to see any conversation about deer management to also include looking at contraceptive measures as opposed to deer culls, or maybe in conjunction with deer culls, because my reading on the subject suggests that the deer cull itself actually has a rebound effect and will end up increasing the population of the herd over time, because as you diminish the availability of the does, it biologically prompts them to actually produce more. So I think that we have to be very strategic in how we manage this, and we have to be led by data and by science, not just by the reaction of how angry we are because we're losing all of our flowers. So I hope that would be included in the motion, that we investigate not only what they're doing in Truro, but also what other jurisdictions are doing. Like, for instance, I think of Oak Bay in Victoria, which has an incredible, problem with deer. And they are way far along the pathway towards contraceptive management and are finding it very effective, but it does take a little bit longer. So maybe we can look at, marrying both of them together, but yeah, it's time to do something, and I certainly support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so the motion's on the table. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you. Yep. I have ABC, Police Advisory Board for the provincial appointee. Yeah.
Yes, Your Worship. So Dave Saxton was our provincial appointee for our Police Advisory Committee for a couple of terms, and he's resigned from the committee. We notified the province, or shared, I guess, his resignation with the province, and recently they got back to us and said, do you have somebody you'd like to have us appoint? So I guess it really is... functionally, I guess it's just another municipal appointee, but they get the nod. They're not actually out canvassing and looking for somebody that meets their objectives, and they haven't shared with us necessarily what their objectives are. So the question, I guess, to council is, are you okay with that when we recruit for members for the Police Advisory Committee, that you recommend one to the province? Or would you prefer to have the province undertake their own solicitation and review process?
I don't think we need the province to do that for us.
Okay.
So
that was my question.
Yeah, I think that when we solicit, that we appoint one. Did we not used to do that separately, or is that how we've always done it? Well,
so I think Dave may have been the first provincial appointee we've had on that board, and as I recall, and it's been a while, it was kind of the same thing, as they reserved in the act the right to appoint somebody to our committee, and we appoint everybody else. And then when it comes time to exercise that right, they're like, "Who do you want?" It makes no sense from my perspective today, which is we have a well-functioning committee and we have no major issues. Now, if the situation were different, maybe the province would exercise their right to select somebody of their own choosing to help us in work through some issues. That's not our case today. So, yeah, that was the case 8 years ago when David was appointed, and it still is the case that they're trusting our judgment in selecting a nominee.
Okay. So do you need a motion, Jeff, or are you good?
No, I just need some direction on that, because if it wasn't what you wanted to do, then we would just respond to the province that we'd prefer that they do it independently. But if you're fine with this approach, then that's easy for us too.
Good. Thank you. Okay, so D, under additions is the accessibility plan. So the accessibility committee is going to present, and I know they've been meeting regularly. They've gotten a lot done. So we're really excited to hear about that. So we can put them on the February committee of the whole, if that works for everybody. Lindsay, you're good with that?
Yeah, I just need you to make a motion to have them present.
Right on. Okay, good. We're all excited to hear. So that motion, Councillor Dares?
Yes, I'll make the motion, and I just wanted to offer that we had a 3-hour session on Tuesday evening in going over the final draft of this, and I just wanted to acknowledge the amount of work that's been put into this project by our communications specialist, Mike Carter, by Francois, and especially by Natalie, who has once again stepped up to the plate. So I just want to acknowledge the amount of work that they put in, and of course Mark is a contributor as well. But they've certainly put a lot of effort into this, and I think we should be really proud of the plan.
Good staff. So motion's been made. I have a seconder. Deputy Mayor. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. I feel like we're way ahead of the curveball on the accessibility piece, where there's a lot of great work done and it's getting done at a great pace. So, okay, good. What was next? I think that were all the additions. Okay, so we've got a presentation on budget. That would be you, CAO.
Okay, so now I'm going to try and share my screen and whip through a presentation in no more than 30 minutes. How's that?
Just heat my coffee. I'll bring that.
Okay, let's see. All right, so you're seeing a screen now. I'm going to try and start up this presentation. I'm going to try and start up this presentation. There we go. So I assume right now you're seeing full screen, the cover slide?
We are.
All right. So this is a presentation I do for council most every year. I don't know if I've missed one in the last 10 prior to getting into our budget process. And the intention of the budget this presentation is just simply to sort of provide us with some context, some internal indicators of what's going on in the organization, and some external indicators of what's going on in the community, and so, or I guess how we fit in the big picture. So I'll roll through it as quickly as I guess I can. And if there are any questions, I can't see you. So if you want to, you can either hold questions to the end, or you can jump in. I won't be offended at all. So let's just roll, if that's okay. So I've said this is exactly what it is. It's ahead of budget preparation. And so for context, Town of Yarmouth is the 5th largest town in Nova Scotia by population. And there are the others that are ahead of us. We're going to review some internal and external indicators. So just to compare us to other towns, our town has 3,585 residential units, and keep in mind this data is probably a year or two old, but we didn't do an exhaustive search to find updated data because frankly it doesn't move very much year to year. So again, this is just about context. So we're roughly about twice the size in terms of dwelling units of the average town in Nova Scotia, but we're about the same size geographically in terms of square kilometers. Our operating budget is double or a little more of the average operating budget of a town in Nova Scotia. And our property assessment is total property assessment is a little less than double the average town. Council size, we have 7 councillors. The towns in Nova Scotia, it seems they either have 5 or they have 7, so the average is 6. We have 7, which kind of makes sense, I guess, given we're one of the larger towns. And by the way, just a side note, we do have to do a study. Lindsay's going to lead the process this year to confirm the number of councillors or to apply to UARB for a different number of councillors. So she's going to do a little bit of a study on that, which will come to council and then get filed with the UARB. That happens every 8 years. So population. So this is population of Yarmouth County going back to 1961. And in 1961, the town of Yarmouth was the largest of the 3 municipal units by population. And as you can see, over the last 60 years, that's changed. At one time, Argyll was the largest of the 3 municipal units, and for a very long time, since 1976, District of Yarmouth has had more population than either the town or Argyll. Bring your attention to the very right side of the graph. So I was able to get some preliminary census data from Stats Canada for 2022 and or 2021 data, and we've enjoyed a bit of an uptick in population. You can see, so town of Yarmouth is the gold line. So our population has taken an upswing since 2016. Argyll's has continued to be on a downward trend, but the District of Yarmouth also received a little bump in population at the last census. So take a little closer look. District of Yarmouth's population went up 2.81% in those 5 years. Town of Yarmouth went up 5.34%, and District of Argyll lost 2.9% of population.
I have to say I did a happy dance with those numbers. I was absolutely thrilled because it's been a while. It's beautiful. It was just beautiful to see. We've done a lot of work to get there, I think. A lot of work.
There's some things that we've done and there's some things that Mother Nature's done, but we haven't actually seen a population increase since the 1991 census. So this is the first uptick since 1991. That's a long time. And all it took was a pandemic. No, that's only, I'm only saying that jokingly. Of course, we've done a lot of work to make our town to provide a stage for our town to be an attractive place, and that goes a long ways. And that's probably maintained a lower decrease in population than we would have otherwise experienced. And but certainly the pandemic has also affected us. But this census data is 2021, right? So I think we're going to continue to see population growth for a while yet. So that's encouraging. And I did a happy dance too. So this is what it looks like in terms of full numbers. So Modi has gone over the 10,000 population. They were once there and now they're back. Town of Yarmouth has grown, and you can see our yellow bar is higher. I don't have the actual number right in front of me, but you can see we've increased, and Argyll has come down slightly. So we're a little closer to Argyll in size now than we were 5 years ago. This is a graph that, now I got to say one thing. In this graph, the District of Yarmouth is the yellow bar, Argyll is the red bar, and the Town of Yarmouth is the blue bar, or the blue squiggly. This says at every age, so along the bottom axis, the horizontal axis is age, and the vertical axis is count. So if you look above, say, the number 40, and you go straight up, where your visual line intersects with the blue line, would give you how many people age 40 living in the Town of Yarmouth, and so on for Argyll and the District of Yarmouth. what this kind of says is that for pretty much every age category, the District of Yarmouth has more people in that age than the town or Argyll. But what we all have to look at here is if you draw a line up from, say, 46, and then you go right, that's the baby boomers, right? We have more people in those age groups than all the age groups to the left, which are the younger people. And what's going to happen if we aren't successful in finding a way to bring more people to our area in those working age and children to our community is, in 25 or 30 years, when the baby boomers are no longer with us, or many of them are no longer with us, our population has to decline unless we find a way. And as we've said already, things are on a bit of an upswing right now. We have to find a way to continue that momentum going forward. So this is the kind of a canary in the coal mine, which everybody has seen as baby boomers have moved through life. They have been the big cohort that has stressed the system at every stop, and even as they exit, as they reach the end of their time, that will put an additional stress on the system. So the baby boomers have had quite an impact, and will continue to have so for a long time. But something to be aware of and concerned of as municipal officials. So some internal indicators. Our tax base. So just a few things about our tax base. We have the third largest commercial tax base assessment among towns. Only Truro and Bridgewater have a larger commercial taxable assessment base. We have the seventh largest tax base among towns and the eighth in residential assessment. And so that can be a couple of things. You remember we have more residential units, right, than many towns, or way more than the average. So either our housing stock is worth less, or we have less. And I'm going to suggest that part of the reason our assessment is low relative to the others, why we rank lower than maybe we should, is that we have over 50% of the residential units within the town of Yarmouth are rentals. And when you think about a fourplex, and think about a standalone detached dwelling, typically the fourplex doesn't carry 4 times the property value or the assessed value of the standalone detached home. And so by having a larger proportion of rental units, multi-unit rentals, I think that's what causes our residential assessment to be lower than you might expect. And that is an issue, and it presents itself different times in different ways to the town. So it's just something to be aware of.
So Jeff,
yes.
Sorry. Within that 50% rentals, that's like housing. The housing, Nova Scotia housing is included in that, right?
Yes. Yeah. So all the public housing and all the privately owned rental units are within that number, and it is slightly over 50%. Now, interestingly, I believe Truro has the same situation. If I recall from speaking with Mike Dolter last year, because it is not something that all towns have. It's not the same for all towns, and so yeah.
Does PVSC evaluate them the same as everything's the same, whether it's provincial housing stock, or they just evaluate that, or do they value it lower? I don't know.
Well, so here's the thing: is that we know that that PVSC values rental units 4 units and over differently than 3 units and under. And I believe they use an income approach. I think I've got this right, but we can seek clarity if you wish. The bottom line is, when they use the income approach, if you are renting your unit, either you have some form of subsidy from the government, or you are the government and you're renting at a lower rate than market. That is what they're using. And so certainly that does impact the value of the property if it is subsidized. And you know that we have over $200,000 that we contribute to public housing in Yarmouth every year. And that money is covering a deficit that the rents don't cover in the operation. And so we pay $200,000, and that actually devalues the property because they're not charging the rents to earn that $200,000, if you follow what I'm saying. I can't see you, so I don't know if everyone's scratching their head.
Oh, and by all means, I mean, Jeff said you can ask questions during or after, but if you want to hop in, I'm not going to look for hands. Just jump in and ask the questions. Probably easier that way. Do it whichever way you wish. Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay. All right. And thank you, Pam. Only Truro and Antigonish have more commercial exempt property than the town of Yarmouth, as towns go. And that's an indicator of being a regional service center. So what commercial exempt property is things like hospitals, schools, churches, government offices, our wharves, things like that, institutional or government things. So that's typical of a regional center. And the more you are a regional center, the more that's going to be the case. And so Yarmouth doesn't have another town, 15 minutes away that is dividing sort of those government offices and operations. And so because we're the only town for an hour in either direction, we tend to be a more densely service center, more dense service center, I suppose. So all of that commercial exempt property ends up in the town. And I should say there's essentially two types of property assessment. When you're talking development, you've got residential and you have commercial. And the way it essentially works is if it's not residential, it's commercial. So you might say, well, a church isn't commercial, but it's assessed commercial exempt because it isn't residential. A hospital is assessed commercial exempt because it's not residential. So that's just the kind of way it goes. And just a reminder for everybody that your tax bill that everyone is concerned about is a very basic formula. It is your assessment, your property assessment, times your tax rate. And anybody can figure out what their tax bill is going to be if they know those two things. They can do the math, and that's what it is. There's no other magic to it. Oh, residential taxable assessment. This is our history that goes back as far as 2007. And just draw your attention to the vertical axis, which has some big numbers, 220 million at the bottom, 340 million at the top. That squiggly line, the red line, indicates what the market value PVSC puts on all of the residential taxable assessment within the town of Yarmouth each year. And so you can see that we had a good thing going, and it took a curve in 2013, 2014, kind of hit a valley in 2016, but things have been on the upswing since. And we shouldn't be surprised to see that the steepness of the curve in the last year or so it's gotten a little more steep. It's gotten a little more upward leaning, and that's because the market, right? Now, property assessments tend to be a year or two behind the market, so you see a bit of a bend in that line on the right-hand side, reflects that a year or 2 years ago, we were starting to see something different happening in our residential market. Values were going up, and that's what that recognizes. It could also be, if we had a surge in new development, that's going to drive the number up. But as I'm sure you're all aware, we haven't seen a surge in residential development. We have a bit of a housing shortage. So this is, I'm going to say, largely a market shift towards a more vertical line. The blue line is what we actually are able to tax on. The difference between the blue line and the red line is what we call the cap. So the province of Nova Scotia has a legislation in place that puts a cap on how much your residential property assessment can go up in a year if you live in that property. So it's owner occupied. And so in years like 2011, if you look up, you see a large gap between the blue line and the red line. That means we had a lot of property value that we weren't taxing because of the cap legislation. But you can see since about 2014, 2015, the two lines have been marching along pretty close together. And the higher inflation is, the more those lines are going to converge, because the cap, or how much of your assessment gets taxed, is determined by CPI. So that's under the provincial legislation. So when the consumer price index goes up, when inflation goes up, essentially people are going to get taxed a little bit more on their properties. And if their property value, market value, does not go up as much as CPI, but they have cap value, their taxable assessment will still go up by CPI and close the gap between the market and the cap. So just to say that yep.
Yeah, does the cap also get affected with the sale of the property, because does the cap is removed? So I mean, we're seeing a lot of properties selling within the town, and I'm assuming a lot of the caps, have been removed.
Exactly. So if you take out a building permit and you renovate and you add value to your home, that's not capped, right? Any cap. So you put an addition on, there's no cap on the addition. But you're right, a property sale removes the cap for the new owner. So you might have a property that's assessed at 200,000, but you're only being taxed, say, 170. You sell it. Well, the new owner, if they pay 200 or a little more, they're going to immediately be taxed on the 200. So that is actually a deterrent to an active housing market, because if you're sitting on a lot of capped assessment and you're okay with your home, right, you're not necessarily going to upgrade because you're getting a good deal. The flip side of that is somebody's paying, right? If I'm not paying my full share for my part of the grand total of taxable assessment, somebody else is, because as counselors, you're going to set a tax rate to meet the budgetary requirements of the day. And so if I'm getting a good deal, somebody else is getting a bad deal. And unfortunately, that's the people with the lower value properties. That is the reality. That's what the research has shown. And so what the cap legislation does is it puts a disproportional burden of the tax on people with lower value properties. So
I think I don't want to say we're lucky here, but that gap, I think we have the lowest gap in the province. We're at like 1% or something. In Cape Breton, I want to say they're over 20. Is it like 23%? It's huge, which means they're losing a lot of money. So anyway, I chaired the all-party committee to try to get us together to get rid of the cap, but it's so political that nobody wants to buy it. But it's not affecting us so much, but it's still a little bit of money.
Yeah. So the issue, like the Cape Breton issue, is I don't know that they're losing a lot of money, because their tax rate would be lower if they were able to tax everything. What it's doing is it's shifting all of that burden to the lower valued property owners. And that makes it hard to increase the tax rates to generate the revenue they need, because the people with the lower valued homes, let's face it, are probably the people with less disposable income, who are less able to afford an increase in the tax rate. So it really handcuffs the municipality to be able to generate the money that they need to pay for the services that citizens want. So it's not great legislation at all, but it does have its difficulties in getting rescinded. It's difficult for the provincial government to explain why removing a cap on property tax assessment would be good for ratepayers. I'll move on if there's no other questions. So residential tax rates, this goes back to 2005, when the tax rate residentially was $1.86, and currently it's $1.66. So I kind of wish we had shown this graph maybe 1 or 2 years earlier, because the tax rate the year before 2005, I think in 2004, if we look back, the tax rate was probably $1.61. And in 1 year, the town increased the tax rate 25 cents. And some people will remember that. And what I remember about that was we were taking money out of reserves, out of our very limited reserves, to balance the operating budget. We didn't have a capital budget to speak of, and we were in a situation where if we were going to continue to have infrastructure to provide services, the tax rate had to go up. So we actually, through the questions I was asking at the time of Municipal Finance Corporation, they developed a model, a tool to use for debt affordability, and we used that tool and other conversations with council and reached the conclusion that if we did not increase the tax rate as we did, that the town was going to run into significant problems. So that tax rate, as you can see, has over the years, it has come down through decisions of council, successive councils. I would argue maybe a little too far, because our tax assessments has not been taken up, and our costs have been steadily increasing. But certainly after we got our house in order, there was some room to bring it down, and councils did. So that's kind of a snapshot of our residential tax history. This one, sorry, I should have probably shown before, but this is the amount of assessment in millions of dollars that we've been unable to tax. So currently on the right-hand side, we're not taxing about 5 million of residential assessment. At its peak in Yarmouth, we weren't taxing 15 million. And the 5 million we're not is fairly small in the 230 million dollars in residential assessment that we have. So yeah, that's related to the cap. Commercial assessment, here's the story. So you can see going back 2003, we had a steep increase in commercial assessment. Some of that was development, some of that was reassessment. It had been years since PVSC had come in and actually looked at each property and put an independent number on it. So they did that exercise. That resulted in a catch-up of commercial assessment. But you can see in 2008, 2009, I guess, was the beginning of the downward turn there. That was a global recession, and it was also coincided with the loss of ferry service. So we had two whacks against our commercial industries, and that, you can see, led to a fairly significant drop in our commercial assessment. And since then, since about 2012, things have been slowly, slightly increasing, more stable, I guess, than anything. And that's the story of our commercial taxable assessment. Commercial tax rates. Okay, so here's our tax rates from 2004 up to 2021. Again, they're pretty high, and the issue with commercial tax rates is we need to be competitive, not necessarily with our neighbors, but with other towns, and in fact with Halifax, because developers come in and they say, well, your tax rate is high. But as I said earlier, it's a two-part equation. It's assessment and it's tax rate. So if our assessments are lower, the tax rate is not going to result in you having a higher tax bill. But it's a difficult thing to explain to people, and commercial developers who maybe aren't as sophisticated on taxation, they look at taxation on a per square foot basis, which is an interesting and a different way than we do. So anyway, the tax rates, the commercial tax rates came down significantly 2012 and sort of hit its lowest in 2016 at 426, and we've increased it just a tiny bit since. So that's the story of the commercial tax rates. We used to have, by the way, business occupancy tax. So that was charged to the businesses that occupied commercial space. That was phased out, and so this chart is showing the combined tax of both the business occupancy and the commercial tax rates when it goes back as far as 2004 in order to provide comparability. Taxes receivable. So are we getting our money that we're taxing? And at its peak around 2011, we had receivables that were in excess of 10% of our tax levy. Now keep in mind, this is a snapshot in time. This is at March 31st. But it's a pretty good indicator because at March 31st, people are a good 7 months past their last or second tax bill. So we had a bit of a tax receivable issue, and we were able to correct that through a couple of policy decisions of council. One was to go to tax sale earlier, so after 2 years in arrears instead of 3. And we have a better structure around tax arrears payment arrangements for property owners who need that. And the other thing, I guess, is that we've eased our interest rate. And when you lower the interest rate, then the annual compounding of that is slowed and does affect your receivables. So our receivables now are very well within the range of where they should be, somewhere around 5 or 6%. Transfer tax. So D-transfer tax is 1%. We charge 1% of the value of every not every, but the vast majority of properties that sell. There are a couple of exceptions within the town of Yarmouth. So this is not based on the number of transactions. This is based on the value of the transactions. And so, interesting here again. You look. We had a very large year in 2007. There was probably a commercial restructuring that happened that year, as well as a busy year. 2008, 2009. Remember the recession, the ferry cancellation. You can see that reflected in the chart here. Right now, D-transfer tax in 2021. That was the third highest year of D-transfer tax collections that we've had in the history, which only goes back to 2003. So that's an interesting one to watch. Where you see the peaks that seem to disrupt the curve, those tend to be one-off kind of situations. Usually something like a corporate restructuring of the property holdings, moving them from one company to another. Well, that attracts the tax and results in large peaks. Levy. Nowhere do we see the effect of ferry cancellation on our tourism industry more clearly than this graph. So this is money that we collect on every room that our hotels let out year round. It's $2 per room night that they sell. And again, you can see 2009, we kind of had a peak, and then things dropped off rather sharply. And then they picked back up when ferry service was resumed, and we hit a peak in 2019, and then we haven't had a ferry operating since. So this money is put in a separate account. It is managed by the owners of the properties from which it is collected, and that group is called the Marketing and Promotions Levy Advisory Committee. And we call them MPLAC. They struck a deal with YASTA several years ago to be a 1/4 funder. So it's the 3 municipalities and the industry essentially sitting at the table at YASTA, and they bring some of this room levy money to share with the municipal taxes that support YASTA. And they also fund events, as you saw earlier in the presentation around the curling. The curling event is hoping to get an equal contribution from the MPLAC committee as they are from the municipalities. So it's a marketing and promotions tax, and it does very much support the activities of our tourism association, as well as some of the initiatives around events and so on in the community. But it is definitely affected when there's no ferry to support that industry. Okay, so this chart, I'll try to explain this one. The horizontal axis is the percentage variance from the assessed value of a property and the sale price. So every dot represents a sale of a property in the town of Yarmouth. And every dot to the right of the 0 on the horizontal axis sold above assessment, and how far right it is how much above. So one that is at the first grid line after the 0 to the right sold for 50% above its assessed value. The next grid line is 100% more than the assessed value, so twice the assessed value. And conversely, the few properties to the left of the zero on the horizontal axis sold below their assessed value. And the numbers going up the vertical axis are the sale price. So if you look at the dots, I don't know, can you see my pointer? Can you see my pointer?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just by way of explanation, this dot right here, it sold for about 200 times its assessed value. Okay, 200 times more than its assessed value at about 300,000. So that property was probably assessed at about 100,000, right? And sold for 200% more. So what I see here is there's quite a dense clustering here at 25 to 50% above assessment and 150,000 roughly. There are some outliers. There are a couple of outliers that aren't even on the chart. They were so far out, but by far there's more blue dots on the right of the vertical axis than the left. So by far more properties are selling above assessed value than below. And I can tell you, I've done this presentation before. I've had to say, the average price is selling, the average house, is selling 17% below its assessed value. That was what I had to report one year. That's obviously not what I'm reporting this year.
No. Looks good.
Okay, so here's another way of looking at the same data. So the horizontal axis doesn't mean a lot. We've just lined up every property sale from the lowest value to the highest value, and we've shown two lines for every sale. One, the red line is the assessed value, and the blue line is the sale price. And what I see here is that the little red spikes that stick up like spaghetti, those are the outliers, the ones that were assessed higher than they sold for. And all of those blue spikes that you see that seem to get higher than the red lines as you move further to the right, that's telling me that the higher the value of the property in terms of assessment, the higher the variance is between the sale price and the assessment, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
It's all good news. If you're not a buyer in the market, it's all good news. Our issue right now is supply, right? So, okay, we'll roll along. I want to talk about
so Jeff.
Yeah.
Does that variance also reflect the lag time between the market valuation and today? So so the assessment would be 2 years behind the market, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be, but what we've typically seen in our assessments year over year, and I'm talking about the town as a total,
right,
is that we've seen assessments crawling up at a rate of 1 or 2%.
Right.
So, assessments have not been moving, really at a snail's pace. This is quite extraordinary.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, it's nice to see. I'm telling a different story than I have been for many, many years. So it feels nice to be able to change the channel a bit. But I do feel for people who are trying to buy in this market, who have become acclimatized to the market that we've had in the past. It's quite different.
Yeah.
Okay. So Nova Scotia municipal indicators. The government of Nova Scotia has a set of 13 financial indicators that they report on every year for every municipality. And they don't necessarily tell the whole story. They're not a complete story of a municipality's situation, but they do tell some things about every municipality. They're telling the same things about every municipality. They're creating a little bit of comparability. And the most important thing is they're creating this discussion. They're creating a time for the CAO or the Director of Finance to talk to council and say, hey, here's what's going on in these 13 measurements. So just going to quickly try to quickly run through them for you. And I am aware, I have a timer going, we're already at 35 minutes. So if anybody wants to call for mercy, I can pump the brakes and finish this another time. So base FCIs. FCIs are financial condition indicators. I'm going to run through these fairly quickly. Reliance on a single business or institution. We're green on that one, which means that we're good. Green is good, red not so good, yellow is in the middle. Reliance on a single business, 4.2% of our tax base comes from one business. That is low, and that's good because that means you're a little more resilient. You're not as vulnerable to a single business closing and devastating your tax base. Our 3-year change in tax base, and this is what I was talking about, Councillor Hatfield, our tax base has only changed 1.1% in the last 3 years. So it's been very stagnant. Those upswings we've seen in the charts that we're seeing this year are good news and will look differently in the future on not only our chart, but probably every chart for every municipality, most every municipality. So we're yellow there because that's rather a slow rate of growth. They want you to be at the rate of CPI, and the consumer price index has been greater than 1.1% over 3 years. Residential tax effort, 4.5%. What that says is that it takes the median household income in the town of Yarmouth and it puts it over the average residential tax bill. So town of Yarmouth is yellow there because we're below the average or I guess the amount of an income, the median income that has to be committed to residential taxes is higher than the average in towns in Nova Scotia. We dug into this because we were concerned, as we should be, and the real issue is that our median household income is so low. And that goes back to the disproportionate high number of rental units, of public housing, subsidized housing, and so on. We're a town, we're a service center. That's what we are, and we do it more in that respect than some other towns have to, I guess. And so that's reality. But keep in mind, this is residential tax effort. That's in those over 50% of our residential units. It is not the tenant it's the tenant's income we're measuring, but it's the property owner that's paying the tax bill. It's a landlord who's paying the tax bill, and when that landlord is subsidized by is the government or a government agency, or is subsidized by government programs to be able to provide that lower rent. To subsidize the tax bill. I just think there's some elements that don't come into this that they're just, you need to be aware of, and that's the point of the good thing about having a statistic like this is it lets us think about the sort of how our community is comprised and what are the characteristics of our community. So some structural FCIs, uncollected taxes. Again, there's a bit of lag on these statistics, and so it's showing us a 7.9%. We're closer to 5 or 6%. That's very good. 5-year budget accuracy, 5 out of 5. So Director of Finance doing a good job there. Operating reserves, I should say budget accuracy, I believe, is only on the expense side. So let me just throw something out. If partway through the year, Brandon sees an opportunity and brings in $200,000, and we spend that $200,000 new expenditures because we didn't anticipate having the money, so we didn't anticipate spending it. So what the province will look at is how much did you plan to spend? Let's say 10 million, and at the end of the year we spend 10,200,000. The province doesn't look at, or this indicator doesn't look at that we actually had more money. They look at, it's about, did you stick to the plan that you started with? And so this one doesn't always tell the whole story, as is the case with most of them. And I point that out because we're intentionally now looking for money with a full-time effort to try and throw this indicator out of whack. That doesn't mean Jerry's not doing a good job. It means Brandon's doing a good job. So just want to throw that out there.
So there must be a way to do this extra money. Can we do it under the table?
No.
Sorry, I had to.
No. So, there's sometimes the conversation is actually good news, and we've got some other examples of that. We'll get to. So operating reserves at 22%. That's where in the range the province wants to see it. Debt service at 2.4%. It's lower than that now, obviously, and that's a different financial strategy than a lot of municipalities. Operating debt. You're not supposed to have operating debt that goes year to year, so that's good that that's zero. Undepreciated assets. This one just speaks to the percentage of your tangible capital assets that are not fully depreciated. There is a quirk with the formula behind this one, but suffice to say that we're in very good position here, as the indicator, the color of the indicator would say. There is a problem with the formula, and instead of fixing the formula, they've moved the threshold so that you have to be, above in order to be green. So, maybe they'll sort that out at some point, but we're in very good shape there. Reliance on government transfers. So this number will go up if the more successful that Brandon is, right? More grants. This is how much of your income revenue comes from grants. So the more we get from grants, the higher that number is going to get, and it could get to the point that it turns yellow. So that's not a bad news story. It looks bad in the indicators, but it's not a bad news story. It's intentional. Deficits in the last 5 years. So we've had two, but again, we've in the last 5 years, if you net it out, our surpluses have been greater than our deficits. And so, we play it pretty thin when we pass an operating budget with, a $5,000 or $10,000 surplus. Yeah, we're going to hit a deficit every now and then, but those deficits haven't been as large as the surpluses. And so we're in good shape there. But it's something to pay attention to. It probably says we're cutting it a little too fine with how much we're budgeting for surplus. Liquidity at 2.1 is green. It's good. Again, it's a point in time. It depends on how much cash you have on hand at a particular time. And combined reserves at 30.9 is below the average. That's no surprise, and but still on the right side of the threshold. So I'll just roll along because I know we're getting long here. Oops. So the annual report on municipal statistics, we're the fourth among 26 towns in our total financial assets, so cash, receivables, and investments, that's liquid assets. We're fourth lowest among towns in long-term debt, might be maybe third lowest or something now, because we keep bringing that down. Third among towns in net financial assets minus debt, and fourth in capital assets. That's at cost as well as net of depreciation. And we're third in accumulated surplus. And so accumulated surplus isn't the amount of money you have, it's all of your assets, right? So over time. So we've done a lot on the infrastructure side. So infrastructure deficit. So infrastructure is your pipes, your plants, your streets, your buildings, and your equipment. Canada's infrastructure deficit in 2007, FCM estimated to be $123 billion across the country. And what we always say is that the town of Yarmouth owns a piece of that. But we've been steadily decreasing our share of that deficit since 2005, while also reducing our debt. And what I mean by that is we have been covering all of our depreciation costs. So that's the amount of the assets that we've used up in a year. We've been covering that and more in some years with part of our tax rate that we collect and we put back out into our infrastructure. So we have been replacing. And so the next bullet, we've invested $59 million and counting in our infrastructure over the past 14 years. Think about that. That's a lot of money for a town of 7,000 people. $59 million over 14 years. And we've reduced our debt at the same time from $4.8 million to $466,000. Our strategy of rating for depreciation and putting that money back into our assets has been one that has allowed us to keep our debt very low, which gives us flexibility when we need it. and it has allowed us to refresh an awful lot of infrastructure so that services can continue to be provided for a long time using that infrastructure. Your Worship, I'm done.
Wow. Thank you for this. I've done it 10 times, but I learned something every time.
I need to say two things before anything else. So this presentation was put together by Lindsay. She gathered all the statistics, put together this wonderful PowerPoint. It looks way better than I've ever made it look. And so I want to thank her for that. And also Jerry and his department, obviously, not only for providing some of the data that feeds the graphs, but this is a good news story in terms of what we're doing with the town of Yarmouth and the stewardship that Jerry has provided to the town in his role of Director of Finance for 15, probably 17 years now, has put us in a very, very good place. And so a lot of this presentation, particularly the last few slides, kind of represent that. And so I just want to shout him out for that and just point out that we're very fortunate.
Jeff?
Yes.
The I get the number, but 466,000 left in the debt. Is there a projection as to when that would be? What our projected hope time is to pay that off? In the last slide.
Yeah. So there's. Am I still sharing my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. How do I unshare? Oh, here it is. There we go. Are we back?
We are.
Okay. So when we borrow, we have to borrow through the Municipal Finance Corporation. And someone turned the lights off on me in here. So what happens is the province sort of bundles all of the municipal borrowing in a year, and they go to the market. So they go to New York in the bond market and they sell Nova Scotia bonds. And the interest rate that has to be paid on those bonds is the interest rate that we get to borrow at. So we're borrowing in the bond market essentially, and Municipal Finance Corporation's facilitating that. When you borrow in the bond market, you borrow for a set term, right, at that interest rate. So obviously, whoever's buying the bonds is expecting their return on schedule, right? So we've got about 2.5 years left of debt payments, and we'll be done. But we can't just reach into our pocket and pay it off without penalty. So we're better off just to ride it out, and we might be debt free in a couple of years, or knock on wood, if the Mariner Center expansion takes off, we might, we obviously have the capacity to borrow and fund all or part of our share that way. So we did a debt affordability exercise with MFC just a couple of years ago to kind of ask the question, how much could the town of Yarmouth borrow given our size and our and whatnot? And I think the number was something like $30 million. So, by not using debt to fund, the pipes and the streets and the sidewalks year to year, as many towns do, right? They just roll debt. We rate for it and we pay for it, and we've been bringing down the debt. So that gives us the ability to think about big projects and to think about using debt for a portion of our share of some of those bigger things.
Wade?
Thanks. And it's getting late, and so I want to do this quick, but I do want to say I've seen this or something similar by you more than once in the course of my time, and I always get excited at that last slide, especially when it comes to how we finance the depreciation. It's brilliant. It works. Why does it hurt us? Because I know I've had that. We've had problems with the province before rating us badly because we do that. And I've had it explained before, but it's never made sense to me.
Yeah. So the FCIs are developed to sort of bring everybody to the middle. It's meant to signal to you as councillors and to the public, are we doing okay? So how are they developed? They're kind of a random set of statistics, really. I mean, and they're trying to create a graph with them to communicate with, but as a whole, they don't tell you a lot. They tell you if you're normal, right? So if you're green on all of them, you're kind of normal as a town. Don't worry. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't worry, because normal isn't necessarily good. You just mentioned, there might be 2 other municipalities at most that rate for their depreciation. So in other words, they're wearing out their infrastructure and not recovering the taxes to be able to replace it at cost, which might have been 20, 30 years ago, right? That's not going to be the cost going forward. They're not doing that. So normal is not necessarily good. Normal is just normal. And we do things abnormally because we rate for our depreciation. That is not what people do. That's not what municipalities do, right? But it's the right thing to do because depreciation is a real expense and replacement is a reality. And I'll just tell you why, and I'll give you another example why I do believe so much that is a best practice. Every water utility in the province has to rate for its depreciation. It is regulated by the Utility Review Board. It is part of what you have to do with your water rates. It's part of what you have to do. But where we're not regulated on our other infrastructure, our other municipal infrastructure, you have the flexibility. And so often I've heard, well, depreciation isn't a cash expense. It should be a cash expense because you will have to replace. And so that's just how I personally feel about it. And I've been able to work with councils for a long time and with the Director of Finance, and we're very committed to that idea that we have to carry the freight this year. We can't just keep pushing it down the road. So because we do things so differently, and the FCI is a fairly new thing, they're trying to figure out what these ratios should be. And the way we collect so much money, for capital and put into the capital fund, it didn't, when they were calculating ratios, they were literally calculating the town of Yarmouth differently than every other municipality because we were doing things differently. And so a few years ago, you may have been on council when we had, I think, 1 too many yellows in our little house. And that triggered a letter from the minister. And it said, your FCIs don't look good here. What's your plan to correct this? And you'll remember the report we sent was, here's why they look different, is because we do things different. And we explained every single one and what our strategy was. And our conclusion is, and we're not going to change. And the minister's response was, thank you. Keep me up to date.
It drives me crazy that we don't get the credit that we deserve, and that you specifically, you and your team, don't get the credit you deserve for doing it the right way.
We do. So when I talk to municipal affairs staff, they agree this is the right way to do it, and so that's all the credit I and Jerry need is that recognition that we're not crazy, that we're doing things right. We're looking out for the best interests of the town. That's all we need, right? What frustrated us a little is sometimes when they calculate ratios and they celebrate something else other than what we believe is the right way. That's a little annoying, but that's okay. We wish that there was some movement at the higher level, the provincial level, to move municipalities to have to follow the same rules for all of their infrastructure as they do for the water, because I think, in all honesty, I think all of our ratepayers would be, a little better off for it. Our roads would be a bit smoother. Maybe our infrastructure would be accessible more quickly. Think we would have the Mariner centers and the other things that communities need in all communities to be viable and enjoyable places to live. So, we wish that we were there. We're not there, but that doesn't mean we can't do it. And that's sort of been our attitude over time is let's do this. And so when we get into the budget process, the first thing you're going to see us do is come to you with a capital budget. And that's in line with what our kind of priority is. It's providing infrastructure so that services can be provided. So we'll ask you to allocate money for capital. The assumption is we're going to rate for our depreciation, so we know how much it is. Let's figure out how we're going to allocate it. And I know we're going to have a challenge this year. There's always lots of demands for that. Your depreciation is never enough to replace. It's enough to buy in the first place, but 20 years later, or in the case of a bus, maybe 5 years later, isn't enough to replace it. So it's going to be challenging, but that's where we start, because that's sort of what we're telling you we believe is a priority. And I say that with respect, Mayor and Council, because at the end of the day, these are your choices. We're giving you our perspective, and obviously I'm a little bit passionate about our perspective, but in all reality, it is your decision. You can say, you know what, we're going to be more like everybody else because maybe being competitive is more important. These are decisions you're faced with, but this is where we've been for a while.
Amen, and thank you, Jeff.
Okay.
So going forward, we'll start to have budget meetings. I don't know when those will start. Can we have the binders ahead of time? Is that possible? I mean, before we table, before we come together in a meeting, I mean.
Yeah, so Jerry does the budget process, and so where maybe I'll just stop talking and let Jerry talk about what his process is.
Go ahead, Jerry.
So to this point, I've been really working and trying to get some of our different entities' budgets going. So I've done a lot of work with Durham trying to get the Mariner Center budget done, and that's been taking a lot of extra time this year with the new facility, trying to figure that piece out. Just kind of barely started with the waste park budget, but that's a pretty straightforward budget year to year. So I know Glennon and I can get that done pretty quick. So I've talked, and as far as the town's budget go, I've talked and asked the different managers to submit capital requests and projects. I've gotten everything back. I had a few questions for a couple of them that I just got one response late this afternoon, and the other one I asked to make sure they get it to me tomorrow. So I wanted to have my draft of a capital plan in front of Jeff so he and I kind of discuss, because even though we've been telling the directors, this is the year to try to reduce our capital spending just because our reserves are kind of at the bottom of the barrel where we want them to be. So we need to build those up a little bit. There's still, what I'm looking at today is still about $2.7 million of capital to spend. So that's not really cutting back anywhere. So Jeff and I'll probably have a discussion with some directors before the capital budget even gets in front of you. So, I do expect the capital budget to be in front of you in a couple weeks' time. And in the meantime, I'll get information out and operating accounts out to the managers and directors again, asking them for their input on that piece. So I've started on the process of payroll, working with Jody. We don't, she and I kind of work on that. We don't bother the directors with those discussions. They're more about more operational and maintenance and those types of accounts. So it's in process. A lot of work gets done before it ever gets in a binder in front of you folks. So the process has started, but hopefully capital will be first within a couple of weeks.
So the most important thing, I think, just to jump in on the mayor's point, is you, Pam, I think, or sorry, your worship, what you were saying is you want to have the binder or the numbers that we're discussing ahead of the meeting. So what we'll do is Jerry and I will, as he says, he's got the capital he wants to review with me. So we'll have that discussion, he and I. When we have the document to bring to you, we'll call a special meeting of the committee of the whole. Okay, but not until we have the document, because if we call the meeting, the document will come late.
No, that's fair. And the only, for me, I don't know if everybody's like me. I can't look at budget numbers the day off. I have to You know how I am, Jeff. You have to tell me 3 times before I get it, right? So it's just stuff to look at and think about, and be able to bring our questions forward, you know, when we do meet. So yeah, we're good. Okay, any other questions for Jerry? I think that was I'm way lost in my agenda, but there's just I can't find my agenda again, but we just have a quick in camera. Is that it?
Yes.
Okay. All right, then let's have a motion to go in camera. Thank you, Councillor Cleveland, Councillor Dares, everybody else. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary?